Now I want to discuss with you something about King David's tomb. And it's really astonishing because the Lord had me writing about that and several other archaeological things, including the location of the temple and some of the details pertaining to King David. And basically, I said in my book that I did not believe that King David was buried where they show his tomb on Mount Zion. I believe that that was to thwart people away from the real site, which the Bible says that David was buried in the city of David. And of course, I wrote the things that I wrote with the Lord showed me these things. And then just in May 1st of 2021, this article happened to come out by Aviva and Shmuel Bar-Am. And this is from the Times of Israel. And this is just totally an uncanny history, because the things that the Lord was showing me that I detailed in my book, The Almond Tree, Aaron's Rod, the Messiah King of Israel. This article helps to verify what I already talked about, and I just think it may be an extraordinary reveal for the last days. So I just wanted to read this article, and it says, History, Mystery, and Occult Converge in King David's Fabled Tomb. In Jerusalem, city of David, visitors find ancient Roman burial caves, an historic 19th century Jewish home, and the site of a shadowy excavation said to produce biblical treasures. Were it not for an eccentric Finn and a former officer in the British Army, King David's family tomb might never have been found. No, we don't mean the tomb on Mount Zion, whose doubtful sighting is based on Christian traditions from the Middle Ages. Rather, we are referring to a group of tunnels and caves in the city of David that more closely fit the biblical description. They were uncovered during excavations adjacent to Beit Meyuhas, a 19th century house built by one of the first Jews to move outside the walls of the old city. It all started when Walter Henrik Juvelius met Captain Montague Parker. Juvelius was a Finnish surveyor, poet, and philosopher who wrote his doctoral thesis on Jewish chronology. Obsessed with the possibility of locating the lost Holy Ark and temple treasures, he planned to bring an expedition to the land of Israel in their pursuit. Parker loved the idea. Parker was a rich noble and possibly bored British ex-army captain. According to some accounts, before his departure, Parker attended a séance at which, in perfect English, King Solomon told him where to look. Well, you're not supposed to consult the dead, so that wouldn't be okay with the Lord. Some say that Juvelius claimed to have read a secret book in an even more secret library which revealed the location of the treasures. Others, like lecturer Tal Chenya, say that Juvelius claimed his unique way of reading between the lines of the Bible would divulge the site. Parker and Juvelius collected over $100,000 from supporters of their quest. They then bribed Turkish government officials into obtaining permission from the Jerusalem Pasha to dig in what we today call the City of David. Living there already was Rahamim Nathan Meyuhas, a butcher whose family had found its way to Jerusalem from Spain in 1510. The slaughterhouse he used for his animals operated before dawn. It was located outside the old city, where Meyuhas lived with his family. Since the doors of the old city only opened when the sun rose, he decided to move outside the walls. In 1873, he picked a location known as the City of David, where there were few houses. Across the Kidron riverbed in Silwan, there was Arab settlement, but the Meyuhas family would be alone in the first Jewish home to be built in the area, and for water they had the Shiloach, or Siloam Spring, and they grew all the vegetables they ate. We got a look at the historic Meyuhas house on a tour with Chenya, who guides regularly at the City of David. He told us that warm and friendly relationships sprang up between the Arabs and their Jewish neighbors across the way. Happy occasions like weddings and holidays were always celebrated together, with the Jews bringing matzah to the Arabs on Passover, and the Arabs' big trays of honey to the Jews. For their weddings, the Arabs even made sure the Meyuhas family would have kosher food. Juvelius and Parker arrived in 1909, hired several hundred Arab workers, and fenced off an area in the City of David, not far from the Meyuhas house. Then they began to dig. At one point, Jerusalem's Jews began to wonder what kind of shady happenings were taking place beyond the fence. Baron Edmund de Rothschild, a banker philanthropist who founded many an early settlement in the land of Israel, got wind of their activities. Worried that Solomon's crown and other treasures could end up in the hands of non-Jews, he decided to buy the property on which the excavations were taking place. Parker was convinced that the treasures were actually somewhere on the Temple Mount. In 1911, when it became obvious that the adventure was coming to an end, he bribed the guard at the Temple Mount to look the other way, and one dark night, when no one was supposed to be about, Parker and his crew dressed up as Muslims and began digging beneath the dome of the rock, the stone believed by some to hold up the world. Unfortunately for Parker, they were not alone for long. That night, an Arab Jerusalemite held a party and had so many guests that he had to find himself another place to sleep. He picked the Temple Mount, and after climbing up, was shocked and startled to find people digging away under the stone. As he screamed for help, Parker and his associates fled from the spot, making it all the way to Jaffa. Unfortunately for them, the telegraph had already been invented, and Jaffa gendarmes had instructions to search their luggage. Parker wasn't fazed for a minute. He invited the police to his yacht, where he said they could go through his bags in comfort. Then Parker loaded the boat with a number of sacks and dashed off before the gendarmes arrived. Contemporary newspaper accounts related that he did make off with some fabulous treasures, from Solomon's crown to Moses' staff. In 1913, Baron Rothschild asked archaeologist Raymond Weil to excavate the property that he now owned in the City of David. Weil, the first Jewish archaeologist to conduct excavations in Palestine, made two major discoveries. The first was an inscription discovered deep in a cistern. Written in Greek, it belonged to a synagogue over 2,000 years old. The inscription is attributed to Theodotus, a Jewish priest who was the head of the synagogue. It speaks of a synagogue founded by his forefathers where Jewish law was read and the Bible's commandments taught. Also mentioned are a guest room, an inn, and water facilities. A copy of the inscription can be seen next to the caves today. The second discovery was made on the slopes above the Siloam Pool, or the Shiloh Pool, a Roman quarry next to a group of caves assumed to have been used for burial. According to the Bible, King David was buried in the City of David, 1 Kings 2:10. Of course, we can't know today what royal tombs looked like in David's time. However, the book of Nehemiah, written in the 5th century BCE, places them just about where Weil discovered the caves. Once Jews began returning to Jerusalem from their exile in Babylon, they began repairing the walls of the city. This is something I talked about in depth regarding another major find that is incredible. It's in my book. Shallun repaired the walls of the Pool of Siloam as far as the steps going down from the City of David. Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, made repairs up to a point opposite the tombs of David. Nehemiah 3:15. Following Weil's discovery and as excavations continued at the end of World War I, The Yuhas family was asked to leave so that workers could dig under their home. They left, but the house remained standing. Later on, Arabs moved into the city of David. After Rothschild passed away in 1934, the property he had purchased was transferred to the Jewish National Fund, the JNF. So in my book, I talk about Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian, and he said that there were some men that actually located the place of King David's tomb, and when they tried to go in these tunnels and tried to get to it and to the treasure that's there, there was a fire that broke out and killed the men who tried to get to King David. And also, one of the things that I wrote about is that it's written that King David was buried so skillfully and artfully that no one could even locate where his tomb was. So God has it protected, and only the people, I said in my book, only the people that God intends to locate this treasure of King David will be allowed to bring it out. And I said that I believe that it will be brought forth just before the last king of Judah returns, the Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth, son of David, restoring the Davidic dynasty. And at that time, these treasures will be brought forth for him to give to the Messiah. And I have often wondered if these things were unearthed, if this would be one of the things that causes the invasion of Gog and Magog, because they come to take spoil. And I know about the gas reserves that were found off the coast of Israel, the Leviathan. So I believe that God is going to allow it to be brought out at the proper time by the proper people who God appoints. And you'll know that God didn't appoint them if they're struck by God's fire breaking out. And these men did not live. So according to what I wrote in my book too, it was stated that a white marker was placed at the place of the tomb of David to protect anybody from trying or attempting again to get into it, because God destroyed those men who thought that this treasure should belong to them. And God's not going to allow it until the time is right. I have more incredible things that you just wouldn't believe that God showed me that I wrote in my book. And if you want to read about them, you can get my book at olivepresspublisher.com. There's so many things that the Lord showed me that I wrote in that book, and that's why I wrote it in the form of a book, because the Lord was impressing me to put it all down on paper, and that was really the only way I could publish it all together. And I had this incredible complete story by the end. But I talk about King David and where he's really buried, and I talk about those things that I just mentioned, plus much more, and talking about Nehemiah, talking about where I believe Zadok the priest is buried, and just some very exciting things for the last days, including where I believe the Lord actually unveiled before my eyes where I believe that the original temple was built. So I know everybody has all these theories and they believe certain things from the Middle Ages, but God reveals it when he wants to. And I got some incredible revelations about it that are just astonishing. So anyway, this will be unveiled in due time, and it's extraordinary. And these things should bring forth the fact that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Messiah, Yeshua, is soon to return, and establish his kingdom in Jerusalem and restore all things. And that will be an extraordinary day. So let's hope it's very soon, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about this. And I thank you for listening and for supporting my channel. And I hope I can bring you many more stories. I hope that I can share some things out of my book again. These are extraordinary archaeological things that are going to be brought forth exactly when God has his timing for them. And I think it's interesting, this article was just published and about a month ago. And here I have things written about it in my book about his tomb not being on Mount Zion, but in the city of David. And I go into details that you just wouldn't believe. It takes a long time with video time to read things out of the book, and so it's a little bit time consuming to read. And I just hope that you'll get a copy and you'll read these extraordinary things. They're truly amazing and astonishing, and I can't wait till the Lord reigns. And I know that we're going to be raptured out of here because of what I told you about believing that the locusts were actually Pharaoh and his army coming up out of the bottomless pit during the tribulation, and men's hearts failing them for fear, and Nebuchadnezzar and his horsemen, an army coming up from the Euphrates River, which is by Babylon. And these things really were shocking to me, but I believe that this is what the Lord is revealing. And I know there's other interpretations, but of course we have to keep moving with the prophecy when it's unveiled, because people can think they have the answer, but then something extraordinary comes up that is verified by Scripture. So all of these archaeological finds are just going to prove all the more that Yeshua HaMashiach of Nazareth is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, restoring the Davidic dynasty. And that's the subtitle of my book, The Davidic Dynasty Returns. So I want to share all these beautiful things with you about King David, and there's actually a lot more in my book about him. So a lot of details and a lot of glory brought to the Lord through this. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, shalom.